Hey there all you good people, I'm Joe from Joe's Computer Museum. Today I'm doing a mass storage mega roundup for Apple II computers. I'm going to show you 3 different devices and what every one of them can do for your Apple II. Warm up the CRT, it's time for another episode. When it comes to mass storage for the Apple II, us Apple II fans, we are really spoiled for choice. We've got lots of different options out there. But the question comes down to, what is going to be the best option for me and my Apple II? Well, depends on a lot of factors. Depends on compatibility, how many Apple IIs you want to run it in, if you want one card to run on all your machines or you just have one card that you need. Whether or not you want it to be able to hook up to Macs as well as Apple IIs, what kind of speed you want it to have. Lots of different variables in there. So today I'm going to take a look at 3 different devices, show you basic pros and cons of each of those devices, and hopefully I can help you guys make a decision on which card you might want or which device you might want for your Apple II. So let's go ahead and check it out. Okay, so the first card we're going to be taking a look at is the Microdrive Turbo, this guy right here. This is currently manufactured by Ultimate Micro. This card is based on some really old technology from Joaquim Longa, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. But basically, this is the first, the oldest, and the fastest, you would call it an IDE-capable mass storage device on the market. This card's claim to fame is that it has DMA, direct memory access. Basically, whenever the computer wants to dump information out of this card into RAM, it just says, "Hey card, put the stuff in RAM so I can go do something else," and the card will do all that magic for you. The target audience of this card are going to be, I'd say, more than novice, but not necessarily pro users who need a super fast hard drive-like setup for their Apple II GS. But not necessarily people who want to swap disks or move disk images around very much. And I'll get into that in just a minute. The pros of this card primarily are the speed. This is basically the fastest card by benchmark and really by objective score that you can find anywhere for your Apple II. I couldn't get any other card that I had to perform faster than this card, so there's a huge pro there. It's very easy to install. You just pop it in and use it basically. It has support for multiple different partitions and multiple different compact flash cards. I believe up to 16 partitions on that. It's about as equal to set up and use as the original compact flash for Apple II card, which by Rich Dreyer, but I'm not reviewing that in this video. It has great production availability. These things are pretty much available 24/7 whenever you want one. You just place an order for it and you get the card you want. Some of the cons about this card are that it is using older technology. I mean, this technology for this guy dates back to like 1993 or 96, somewhere in there. But that's not really a huge negative mark because it still works really well. It's a little bit cumbersome to set up and use than most other devices, primarily because it comes with software that you run from the card to configure it, to set it up for how many partitions and what drives or what images you want in what order. It is a little bit more difficult to use in that the card here is partitioned. Using a kind of a proprietary raw format for the card itself, which means when you want to do anything with this card, you have to use that partitioner. The utilities are included on a boot image on the compact flash drive when you get it, but those utilities are not built into the device, so you have to make sure you back that up, and if you make any changes to this device, you have to use that utility to make those changes. It's a little difficult, actually. One of the things I found is it's difficult to put this in and out of the computer because it doesn't have a lot for you to grab onto. I don't know about a lot of you, but when I remove cards from my Apple II, I tend to rock them a little bit back and forth to get them to pop out of the slot. Whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know, but on this card you almost have to pull it straight out of the slot, and there is a lot of tension on those pins to get that out. So if you're needing to move the card around a lot, it can be difficult to get that in and out of there. big downside, in my opinion, is it does not have hot swap of media or disk images. If you need to change what's on this card frequently, you have to shut the whole machine down, pop the card out, put a new card in, turn the computer back on, all of that magic. And because these are hard formatted direct to the card, if you wanted to change what's actually on this card, you have to go through a bit of a process of copying stuff from other media or whatever, or taking this out and putting it on a PC with a cider press or something like that to change what's on this card outside of the Apple II. The final downside that I noted with this is that these come by default set up for the Apple II GS on the firmware here. So straight from the manufacturer, it's Apple II GS, and that is it. If you wanted to change this, you can put an Apple IIe firmware on here, but you got to go through a process of removing the chip, putting it in a flash programmer, and reprogramming it every single time that you want to change that. So basically, out of the box, this is set up for use on a single type of Apple II. So take that as it may. Next up, we have the compact flash for Apple II 3000 or CFFA 3000 from Rich Dreher of R&D Automation. This guy is usually considered the gold standard to which all the other cards are compared, mainly because it was one of the first and it's one of the most versatile cards out there. The target audience for this one, in my opinion, is just about everyone. It's got all of the features you might need for power users. It's got elegant ease of use for beginners, and has insane features that allow you to do just about anything you want with the card. The pros of this card, in my opinion, are that it has the best set of features of all the cards. Not only can you put a raw formatted card in there, but you can also put a FAT32 formatted card in there, or on the USB port, either way you want, or both at the same time, however you want to do it, and get access to your images however you want. That makes it to where you can, just take your USB port out of the or USB card out of this, plug it into your PC or your Mac, drop a image file straight onto that, plug it back in, and you have instant access to that. Extra cool thing is, this USB, that's hot swappable. While the machine is on, especially if you're using an Apple II GS, you can unplug this right from the machine, move it to a different computer, move it to your modern computer to move your images around, plug it back into the Apple II GS, and lo and behold, you just have instant access to that. Add in the fact that this guy automatically installs a classic desk accessory for the Apple II GS, and you just can control Apple Escape, or whatever the key sequence is there, and you can get right into the desk accessory, get into the firmware of this card, and set up access to any of those images that you want that you put on the card. That is insane. Additionally, the card has the firmware built in so that it will work on any Apple II from an Apple II Plus up automatically. All you got to do is change the little switch there, and it'll work on basically everything that you want. Downside of using it on the older Apple IIs is you can't get access to the firmware while the machine is live, but that's okay because the older Apple IIs don't really work well with that anyway. The cons of this guy are the production availability. Rich Dreher runs a production run of 100 to 300 of these every couple of years, and if you're not watching his site and paying attention to that, you could miss a production run, and you could go 8-9 years before you're able to get one of these cards. So that's kind of a downside there. And the only other downside that I really noted about this card are this guy right here. This allows you to connect an external toggle switch that allows you to flip-flop disk images that are set up in a specific manner, which I'll show a picture of there in a second. But these pins, as you can see, they're a little mangled on mine. If you're using this in like an Apple IIe and you need to remove the card, put the card in, or remove it frequently, you have to be careful because as the card does the typical Apple II pop out of the slot thing, these will get caught on the plastic frame of the Apple II and it'll bend them all up. But, if you're careful, that's really not a big issue there. One of the other thing I wanted to know, that's not really a positive or a negative, it's just a kind of a thing of this card. There's some variability in the performance of the card depending on the media type and image formatting that you use, whether you're using RAW, USB, compact flash, whether you're using an IMG file or a ProDOS order file or a 2MG file or whatever. It can change the the performance characteristics a little bit, but in my experience, usually no more than 5% or so. So it's usually not really anything you have to worry about what format you use. Just throw it on there and it'll work for you. So the last thing we're looking at is the Floppy Emu by Steve Chamberlin, also known as Big Mess of Wires. The target audience for this guy, I would say, would be casual users of both Apple IIs and Macs, and potentially even Lisas, who want a single device that will work across their entire collection. That's right, this guy will work on Apple IIs, Macs, and Lisas, which is pretty awesome. The pros with this guy is that I believe this is the most versatile of all of the devices. It works on any smart port, floppy port, or HD20 capable Apple II, Mac, or Lisa. Now this is the version 1. The version 2 he's got is a little bit better. It has some extra compatibility built in and circuit protection that make it the better option. So if you're going to buy that, buy it at Floppy Emu, go for the version 2. Extra upside, rarely if ever requires you to open your computer because, as you can see, it just connects straight to the connector on the back of the computer, which is great. Another boon for casual users. And production availability. This thing is available pretty much 24/7, 365. The cons with this are pretty significant, though. The primary one is its speed. This poor guy is glacially slow, and it doesn't have anything to do with the Floppy Emu itself. It has to do with the technology it's using. The 19-pin connector there that's used to hook that up to your Apple IIs or your Macs. No matter which mode you're using it in, those connectors are always really slow. Especially on the Apple IIs, both the Smart Port and the floppy modes run at 1 megahertz at the standard Apple II bus speed, which just means they run really slow. The cards in here can have problems with certain kinds of formatting utilities. Steve suggests that you always use either file-by-file copy or sector copies to move data to an image file on the device. If you're doing a disk-to-disk copy on your device itself, or on your computer itself. There's details in that. If you're going to do that, read the manual. He puts better details in there. Something that I find is makes me, grumpy a little bit, would be that there is no unified firmware for both Macs, Lisas, and Apple II modes. So if you're wanting to get a single one of these and use it with both your Apple IIs and your Macs, you have to flip-flop the firmware every time you connect it to a different device. And when you're in HD20 or Smart Port mode, you can only use a single image at a time, and you have no option to change the image while the system is running. In HD20 mode for the Macs, I guess that makes sense. It's the Mac's hard drive, it's booting from it. You don't want to be messing around with it or changing it. But if I'm using it in Smart Port mode as a second device, maybe I want to switch that around. I want to eject it and put another disk in there or whatever. And I find that a little whatever, but it's not the end of the world there. Now, that's not even all of the possible mass storage options for the Apple II. There's a couple others out there that I did not test, mainly because of production availability and because I personally don't need those devices. But let's take a look at those real quick, and I'll give you my thoughts from a 10,000-foot view. First is the SD Floppy 2 from A2 Heaven. I believe that the target audience of this is going to be casual users of classic Apple II units who want a simple option for preserving their disk images. The pros of this guy is, its production availability. You can get it whenever you want. It's really easy to install. You plug it in just like you would a classic 2 disk drive. It connects to your regular disk 2 controller. And you can also get an adapter from the same builder, Plum and Boyzaloff, who did the Apple II VGA adapter that I reviewed previously. You can get a device, or you can get a connector from him that will allow you to connect that to Apple II and Apple IIc and Apple II GS machines as well. You can also get a custom enclosure to make it look like a disk 2, so nerd cred. The cons with this are that it emulates only the original Disk 2 drive and only supports 140K disk images. So, you know, it's limited in what you're going to be able to connect to it, and it's going to be limited in the speed that you're going to get out of it. So it's going to be slower than other options. It's basically just running at Disk 2 card speed with no DMA. And the front interface on that, you know, is a little, I would say, it could be a little clunky. It's a little difficult to determine which images to pick. You press a button and you have to remember which one in the order it is or whatever. You know, I don't know. So take my notes here with a grain of salt, obviously, because I haven't personally tested it. I'm just going over, you know, what I've gathered, information I've gathered. Another option is going to be the Unit S-Disk from Nishida Radio. The target audience there is going to be intermediate to advanced users of classic Apple II units who want a simple option for preserving their disk or using and preserving their disk images. I really haven't been able to get a lot of detail on this device, so you know, my opinion here really isn't worth too much. I don't see a lot of pros with this device based on what I've gathered. The cons with it are going to be production availability. Nishida Radio makes things in very, very small batches, on limited runs, very infrequently, so even getting one is going to be difficult. And it has no enclosure. It's just a bare board, so if you're a hacker, nerd, super maker, or whatever you want to do, you're going to be cool with that, but casual users, you know, they don't want that stuff hanging around the outside of their computer. They're just going to want to have something that's pretty that they can plug in. Another option also from Nishida Radio is the Unit S-Disk Air. Again, same target audience, intermediate to advanced users. The pro here is it's got a really nifty Wi-Fi option. You put an application on your PC, connect the Unit S-Disk Air to Wi-Fi, and you can serve your Apple II disk images over Wi-Fi. That is kind of cool. I think its usability though is I don't know. I don't see a huge benefit there other than, again, nerd cred. It's neat. Hey, look, my Apple IIc is wireless. Awesome. The cons, again, are production availability because Nishida Radio pushes those things out in very small batches. There's no universal hardware on this. Depending on which Apple II you have, there's 3 different versions depending on that. So if you want one device that works on all of your Apple IIs because you don't want to spend a lot of money on that, you're going to end up running into an issue there. No enclosure, again, it's just a bare board that sits outside your machine. And from what I've been able to gather, again, I haven't tested one of these directly. This is information that I've gathered from the internet. It's relatively difficult to get the primary configuration going. There's like a 2 or 3 page list of instructions, fairly detailed, just to get the thing working. And again, if you're super nerd and you like, you know, the frustration of making your old devices work, that's perfect. But again, if you're a casual user, it's really not going to be for you. Well, I guess that leaves the question now, which one of these is the best one for me? Well, if you're asking yourself that question, it really depends on what you're going for. If you're a casual user, or you're someone who has a lot of Macs and a lot of Apple IIs, and you want one thing that works across every one of them, then this guy right here, the Floppy Emu, is going to be the one you want. Basically works on all of those devices and is easy to use. No fuss, no muss. You put your images on the card, you plug it into the machine, you go. There's very little configuration you have to do, and you don't have to touch any of the internal hardware of any of your computers. If you're looking for the absolute fastest device that you can get, and you happen to have an Apple II GS, and you want to make your Apple II GS soar, that guy right there is the one you want, the Microdrive Turbo from Ultimate Micro. This is the absolute fastest mass storage device on the market today for Apple IIs. Available anytime, just go to the website, pick one up, and you'll be set. If you are looking for a device that will work across all of your Apple IIs, be super versatile, and basically allow you to connect any image at any time on any machine anytime you want, then that's the guy you want right there, the Compact Flash 3000 from Rich Dreher with R&D Automation. Although if you want one of those, be prepared to wait. It can sometimes take 2-3 years before production runs until you can get one. Now, if you want all the super nerdy details on these cards, I put together a list of full benchmarks, both real-world operating system boot-up benchmarks and synthetic benchmarks on my website. So I'll put a link in the description down there so you can check it out. Well, that's all for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit the like button or subscribe, and remember, 8 bits are all you need. Alright, so here's what we got in. A gentleman brought in a USB flash drive that somehow met an untimely demise, as you can see there. Yeah, that's not supposed to look like that. And he told us there's a lot of important pieces. Of course, that remains to be seen. We'll do that in a minute. And then in our goodie bag, we got bits and pieces and parts and yum-yums and stuff. So let's look at that. Here's the Altero CPLD. This is the glue that does all of the magic on there. Let me see if